Ready when you are, Mr. Chair.
All right, it is 3:01 p.m. I'd like to call the operating budget meeting to order. I would remind each and every one of us that's in the chambers that's using either a laptop or an iPad, it is important that we have your volume turned down so we can alleviate any feedback that might come through. As we said yesterday...
I'm so sorry, Mr. Chair. They can't hear you.
Start that.
Let's start over.
Okay, I'll start over. Okay, so now
Thank
it
you.
is still 3:01 p.m. I'd like to call the operating budget meeting to order, and just a reminder to each and every one of us, if you're using an iPad or a laptop, please have your volume turned down so we can avoid any feedback. Also, to council members or to any of our guests, when you speak, we do ask that you get the microphone very close to your mouth because we want our folks that are guests online to be able to hear us. We were having some difficulty with that yesterday. So if we can do that, we are calling the meeting to order, and if we could please, for the record, if we could please have a roll call. Ms. Viviano.
Baylor.
Aye.
Connor. Aye. Freeman.
Aye.
Fusco. Aye. Holland.
Aye.
Kamer. Lombardo.
Aye.
McKittrick.
Aye.
Malik.
Aye.
Mosley.
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Amobian. Somerville.
Aye.
We do have all council members present except for Councilman Kamer and Councilwoman Amobian.
Excellent, thank you. All right, thanks. Just want to first off thank everyone for really staying on point yesterday. This is a budget hearing, not so much a program hearing, and I know yesterday each and every one of us had questions about the different programs and departments that came before us. We did have to kind of discipline ourselves to stay in our lane and to have all of our questions focus around the budget. Would also ask if there are any budget questions you could, for our benefit, if you could refer to the page that you're asking questions about when talking about budget numbers. So we will begin, and I believe we're going to begin tonight with legislative branch of our Akron City Council's legislative branch. And who will be presenting for us this evening? Will that be President Somerville?
Mr. Chair, our clerk will present on the clerk's budget.
Okay, very good. Ms. Viviano.
Is it okay if I stay here so I can monitor the Zoom, or do you want me to come down there?
You feel free right there.
Okay.
I think that's fine.
Thanks so much. So in 2021, we continued to conduct council meetings virtually. We minimized paper copies that were needed. We updated equipment as needed. We have laptops with webcams here. We saved on advertising costs. The charter amendment allowed us to publish a lot of notices on our website instead of in the Beacon Journal. We also eliminated the vehicle costs for a clerk. The charter amendment changed the special meeting notice delivery requirement. We hosted an intern to help with the clerk's office functions and CARES Act data collection. Our 2022 goals and objectives, we want to continue to conduct hybrid meetings for a safe return to chambers, but we're trying to improve that technology. As you can see today, we're testing some things to see how we can make this better, how we can improve on this, and just make it easier for our citizens to see, make it easier for those at home to participate. Yeah. And then we'd also like to add 2 council aides by spring. We have dwindled in staff here recently, and we would like to get those numbers back to a more sustainable office. We'd also like to modernize the council operations. Same with kind of what you're seeing here with the extra cameras, what can we do to make this a little bit more modern?
Good, thank you. One question, and we've kind of talked, how long do we think before we have those 2 aide offices filled?
There are 2 recs in. One person has accepted. We hoped by the end of the month.
Oh.
And then I'm not sure about the other rec yet.
Okay, okay, very, very good. All right, and President Somerville, thank you so much, Ms. Viviano. President Somerville, can I come to you now, please?
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I think all council members should have gotten a copy of City Council's 2021 goals and objectives. So I'm just going to let you read those, but I'm just going to share the 2021 accomplishments, the things that we were able to accomplish out of our goals and objectives. We were able to purchase, as you see, dividers and chairs for council chambers, which are easily, we can wipe down and sanitize, just to make for a safer environment there in council chambers. Another thing that we accomplished in 2019 is we were able to finalize our 2019 Neighborhood Partnership Grant Program. Because many of our nonprofits were not able to hold their events or do their programming in 2019 because of COVID, we did grant extensions to awardees that wanted those extensions, okay? So there were some nonprofits that held their events and did their programming in 2021 because they couldn't do it in 2019 due to COVID. Also, part of our accomplishments was the onboarding of council chief of staff. Again, we talked about this as part of our goals as council really is trying to create more council-driven projects. Again, we want to produce more work out of council's office right there on the 3rd floor. And one of those accomplishments that we were able to do was the initiative of the Council Cares Act grant program, where we successfully distributed $961.30 in CARES Act funding. A part of those dollars that we distributed, we also purchased 4,320 at-home COVID test kits, and we planned a multi-site drive-through distribution event. Again, it was really important for us to be able to make sure that as much of those dollars went right back into the community. Another accomplishment that we've started in 2021 is to initiate the redesign of council's website. If you have visited our current website, it is outdated and it is not easy to navigate. So in our redesign, we will have more of a professional look, simpler navigation, it will be more engaging, and better branding. We really want council's website to be a real tool for our constituents, a tool that they could use 24/7. We will kind of display council's website at council's retreat. We want council members to look at some of the ideas and provide input in terms of what the new Akron City Council's website should look like. We were also able to accomplish hosting 2 interns for 10 weeks. So we had a policy intern, we also had a communications intern. For those of you probably remember, we did get a presentation on our policy intern who did research on community camera programs and also community policing models. Our communication intern conducted research on best practices for the City Council's social media policy. And again, at our retreat, you'll get an opportunity to hear some of that research that our intern helped us with. We'll now move into our 2022 goals and objectives. And our goals for this year are to revamp the Neighborhood Partnership Grant Program. We've done that by increasing the allocation from $80,000 to $100,000. So that's $10,000 per ward. We're also planning on doing a pre-submission informational forum. That way we can meet with our nonprofit groups, make sure that they understand the guidelines of the programs, help them fill out the applications, and give them an opportunity to ask any questions that they might have. Also, another goal for us is to convene a safe housing steering committee We want to be able to develop short and long-term strategies to ensure Akron residents in publicly funded housing will have safe, sanitary, and secure housing. And so we're looking to hopefully next week put out a press release regarding the Safe Housing Steering Committee. We want all council members to participate in that process, so you'll hear more about that. Another goal and objective is to establish a public relations plan. So we look to develop our social media policy, but also to launch our Facebook and Twitter pages this year, at least by September 12th. We know how important social media is, and we want to be able to engage our residents and keep them in the know in terms of what is happening in the city. So we're taking our time because, again, we want to make sure that we're doing it right. And our social media policy is also going to be a topic of discussion at our council retreat. Again, we want to get council's feedback in terms of what council's social media presence should look like. And I think Sarah also talked about, really our goal is just to update our chambers. Again, we really want to be able to make sure that we're engaging residents and giving them an opportunity to engage in meetings, whether they come downtown or from their home or from their businesses. And then just lastly, a couple other goals that we have and objectives is that we do have a council retreat that is planned for April 30th. And so you'll be getting additional information on that. And then also another goal is that we do want to plan at least 2 council caucuses by the end of the year. Again, giving council an opportunity to come together and talk about topics that council feels needs to be addressed. So, Mr. Chair, that's all that I have at this time.
Okay, thank you. And then in regards to the retreat or whatnot, if any of us want to reach out and offer any items or have any questions, we can do that in the days to come.
Mr. Chair, is your microphone on?
Sorry. Madam President, so in regards to the retreat, if any of us want to offer anything for the retreat or we have any inquiries, we can contact you before the retreat. Is that correct?
Yes, please. So any items of discussion that you want addressed or talked about, please send those to Sarah.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you. Thanks, Sarah. Thank you, Ms. Somerville. And at this time, we'll start with the chambers. Any questions for, I guess, Ms. Biviano or President Somerville? Mr. Shamus Malik.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to our Clerk of Council, Ms. Biviano, and to President Somerville. I really appreciate the presentation. I just want to particularly note that adding a council chief of staff, I think, has really helped in terms of professionalizing council's work, and particularly, working on policy initiatives, conducting community outreach, and I really hope we can continue to expand that, look at whether additional staff capacity in that regard would assist us. Having the interns was helpful, but having more permanent people to help us work on this housing initiative or our ongoing safety initiatives or other things, I think would be helpful. When it comes to community engagement, I think oftentimes we're posting on our social media or we're sending out emails as council members. It would be helpful if we had folks to help us deliver graphics and have a regular schedule. And Dr. Williams has helped with so much of that, and really appreciate it. Both she and you, Ms. Biviano, have been an absolute joy to work with, and I appreciate it so much. So just want to make that point, that adding that capacity, I think it's worth the investment of funds going forward.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right. Madam President, Ms. Biviano, thank you for all that you do. Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Neal.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Madam President, Ms. Biviano, for the presentations. We're being presented with what are our goals and objectives for council, but we haven't had a chance to caucus as council to come together with collective goals and objectives. I mean, we're in the midst of the ARPA fund. We all submitted requests for awards. We're going to finalize this budget before we have a chance to meet. When will we have an opportunity to allocate funding for our awards from the ARPA dollars? If we don't do this now while we're in the budget, to say that we'll come back and redirect, that's not the way to do it. I mean, we're setting the budget now, and as I shared, I mean, as we talk to our colleagues across the country, other legislative branches are allocating dollars directly to their wards. We saw the benefit of being able to do that with the COVID dollars. So that's one concern. When we talk about council's goals and objectives, appreciate what came from Madam President, but I don't know who met to put those aren't, I can't say that those are councils because I haven't been a part of any of those discussions. I think now is the time when we need to allocate those dollars, towards our wards. That's my first question. I have other ones, but I'll leave that one to be answered first.
Okay, thank you. I think that's probably, and Madam President, I want to speak for you, but that's probably an offline conversation with Madam President and maybe Mr. Fricker if you're involved in that as well. Okay, thank you. Yes, Ms. Samples. Ms. Samples? Okay, I thought I saw a hand up. I apologize.
My hand was up. Thank you, Councilman Freeman. I might be missing it. It may be in the other file that Steve Fricker sent to us, but I was looking for, I see the goals and objectives, but what is our total council budget? I don't know if I saw that or not.
Okay, I beg your pardon. I was having a hard time hearing.
The audio was very light there, but I think it sounded like you're asking for council's total budget.
Yeah.
Yes, she's asking for council's total budget.
Okay, so would refer you to pages
69.
Yeah. 69, 70, and then that other page 71. That's
I'll get you a grand total here in a
that's a fund
second.
that is administered by council but doesn't affect us so much. Mr. Fricker?
Yeah, I will get you a total here in a second. So the total council budget is $1,676,522.
You said 1.6.
1.6, okay. What page is that on, Steve?
So that's going to be a combination of pages, let's see.
69,
It's going to
70.
be start on, on 69, 70, and 71. Yeah.
Is the breakdown on there? I apologize. I don't have that in front of me.
Yeah, if you, council budget only covers 3 pages. Of the 1.6, is that 100,000 SALT fund included in
That
the
is
one-
correct,
so-
yes.
Okay.
Yes, I included that.
So you're saying the breakdown is on there, correct?
I'm sorry.
Please say again.
The breakdown, is the breakdown of the budget on those pages?
Yes, yeah, there's a breakdown on those 3 pages.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, if we could move ahead here
Chair?
to,
Mr. Chair, I can see that Councilman Neal has his hand raised.
oh, okay, Mr. Neal?
Yes, sir. I have another question, but I didn't hear the answer to my first question as far as council convening to discuss funding for ARPA dollars for our wards.
Right, and I had referred to, I think that's an offline conversation right now with Council President Somerville. Mr. Fricker, you could be involved in that conversation as well, but I think that's, as far as ARPA dollars and council goes, that's a conversation we're not going to hold necessarily for this day, today.
Oh, okay, well, Mr. Chairman, I do have another question, but I would like to state, per the instructions that come from the U.S. Treasury, these discussions are supposed to be public for the citizens to participate. We're a representative government. I'm sure we've all been contacted. We've held meetings in our wards on how these dollars are to be expensed. To have a closed backdoor conversation, I don't think is fair to our constituents. So I would like for us to, before we have to pass this budget, have a discussion with the council on how we're going to bring these dollars into our ward. But I do have another question. Looking at dollars that have been expensed. Now, I know we created a chief of staff position. Did any legislation ever come in before council for us to vote on that position? And how much is that position being paid?
I'm not, so you're referring to who, please?
Well, I mean, because we have it in the budget, we have a position, but for any position to be created in council, it takes a 2/3 vote by council. Now, maybe I'm missing, per section 30 in our charter and our rules, you know, we are a legislative body. We don't have any bosses, we're co-equal. For us to hire someone, council only operates through resolutions and ordinances. An ordinance has to come in for us to hire someone. Not saying that we don't need the person, but if we're going to follow our rules,
okay, let me go
and operate in order,
let me go to President Somerville, because I think she had a response there.
Yeah, I just wanted to correct something so that Councilman Neal has the correct information. Akron City Council has one hire, and that is our clerk, okay? But we can provide you with salary information or whatever else that you're asking for, Councilman Neal. Just let me know, and I'll get you all the information that you need, okay?
Well, yeah, I'm just going by our charter. Our charter says for any employment in council, it takes a 2/3 vote. And I'm asking, you know, not, it's been spoken about how the position has helped us, but again, when did this come before us? How much is that position being paid? I mean, it's public information, but if council doesn't know, we've got to operate within, I mean, we've been talking about following our rules, following our charter. I'm just asking, when did it come in? Maybe I missed it.
So the budget question is regarding how much she's making, or?
What is that position being paid? And for us to create the position, council has to vote on it. We can't just create the position. I mean, it's just like, I mean, it was great that we spent that money. I mean, it was a great cause to get out the COVID kids. But we can't just expense money without voting on it as council. And these things are missing. So I'm just asking, maybe I missed it. Maybe I missed the vote. I'm just asking, when did the legislation come in for us to approve the position and to approve the salary, and where it was coming out of our budget?
Okay. I understand the question. I don't think it's a question we're answering here today. We're trying to move through numbers, but it is a legitimate question, and I'll ask yourself and Mrs. Somerville to please, get together on this. I think we'd all like to hear if we're mistaken about something, but
well, Mr. Chairman, I'll leave this here. I know we'll have a chance to have another conversation. These are budget hearings. This is a direct budget question. This is where these things should be finalized. I mean, we operate as a collective body.
okay, again, and let me encourage you to have conversation with President Somerville. All right, I think she's open to that. And if there's anything that we need to know, if there's any rules that we're breaking, I'm sure that'll be brought to our attention.
Yes, sir.
So I want to stop now because I want us to get hung up here. So thank you to
Mr.
President
Chairman,
Somerville, thank you to Ms. Viviano, and we're going to move on now. If we
Mr.
could
Chairman, a
please
point of information.
To our courts, I would ask everyone if you could please come up and introduce yourselves, and we want to welcome you today.
Okay, yeah, let me see, who do we have first?
Hi, I'm Judge Cable, the administrative judge at the court.
We'll really need the microphones, because, we've got to be close to the mic. Anywhere you want, wherever you're comfortable, but we have to be close to the microphones, otherwise it doesn't go out there.
All right, I'm Judge Cable, the administrative judge at the Akron Municipal Court. Nice to see a lot of you. My mic wasn't turned on either. You'd think we would know all this by now, right? I'm Judge Cable, the Administrative Judge of the Akron Municipal Court. It's very nice to see all of you, especially get to see some of you in person. I'm going to provide my time to the Court Administrator, Montrella Jackson, who's going to be making the presentation. Certainly, if any of you have any questions for me, I'll be happy to answer those questions. So thank you.
Thank you, Judge.
Good evening. Can you all hear me? Good evening. I'm Montrella Jackson, the Court Administrator of the Akron Municipal Court, and I'd also like to take this opportunity to introduce the judges that are here present with us.
Hi, I'm Judge Nicole Walker.
And then we also have Judge John Oldham, who's here. Very good. So thank you for this opportunity to present our 2022 budget and our accomplishments from last year. So you all should have received a copy of our statistics comparing us to similarly sized courts, which would be Dayton and Toledo municipal courts. And you can see in terms of our caseload sizes, and I always like to highlight this, is that the Akron Municipal Court, with our 55 staff, we are always doing more with less staff. So when you look at the numbers, so at this point, Toledo is probably double the number of staff we have, but their caseloads normally run about 30% more than us. And then for Dayton, their staff numbers actually have outpaced us, although their caseloads are usually 30 to 40% less than Akron Municipal Court. So I like to point that out, and then you can see in the graph there our budget proposals for 2022. And then also looking at our caseload numbers, because in the last 2 years we've been recovering from the pandemic, and so all of our courts across the board were just returning to normal numbers. And looking at our numbers across all of our courts, I would say that we're about 80% back to the full numbers of our court caseloads. So for our traffic cases, we handled 15,162 cases this year. We're slightly up from last year. For our civil cases, we handled 7,847 cases. And so we're up slightly from 2020. And then for our criminal cases, we're down slightly. We handled 9,804 cases. For our probation department, we handled 802 referrals in 2021. I'd also like to share our accomplishments, and you will see attached to the statistics on the back a highlighted sheet. And excuse me, what we like to do is, tie all of our goals and our accomplishments to our mission statement. So we have 4 broad categories, and I will just highlight a few of those for you today. So last year, as part of our in-service training with staff, we had Alice active shooter training, which was conducted by the Akron Police Department. That was in August of last year. And then in terms of other accomplishments, we implemented an online dispute resolution pilot, which you all should have received a link that Sarah was gracious enough to share kind of last minute. But I did want to share a highlight about the pilot program that we received. We were recognized by the Ohio Supreme Court in January 26th of 2021 at the Municipal Court Judges Conference. And I'll just read a few sentences from there. It's from Chief Justice O'Connor. It says, "I want to recognize the Akron Municipal Court for its robust participation in the online dispute resolution pilot. The program gets the landlord and tenant together before an eviction hearing to see if a resolution can be reached. Akron has embraced the concept and made a concerted effort, and it shows. They are outpacing even larger counties in getting cases resolved. If it is keeping a roof over a family's head and ensuring the landlord is getting paid, that is a good outcome. There are 8 municipal courts across the state in different stages of the pilot program, and the pilot includes tips and best practices. The Akron Municipal Court judges approve the pilot, and Magistrate Angela Hartway leads the initiative. Angela works with fellow magistrates Jennifer Towell and Connie Hightower of the Akron Municipal Court, who preside over eviction hearings 4 days a week, holding 20 to 30 eviction cases per morning. To manage the pace, 15 to 20 people populate the magistrate screen simultaneously. It's similar to the way groups of tenants, landlords, and lawyers appear in a physical courtroom. There's a great deal of information on the website about the program, but I also want to just highlight, because Magistrate Hartway is here with us today, and we have several other staff, but I wanted to take that opportunity to share the program with you. So also, Judge Cable has created a new program called Connect Program, which assists those offenders with developmental disabilities. So that is one of our 3 specialized programs we have now, and then we also have 6 specialized dockets. So, and then 2 items that are on our accomplishments, but also on our goals for this year, would be to finalize implementation of a new case management system, which you all have heard quite a bit about. And I'm excited to share that, with the pandemic, we've had to extend the timeline to some degree, but it is going to be remarkable what we can do with the system coming from a 30-year-old system. And Cleveland is the first court that's going forward with theirs, and they're also expanding their timelines. And then also another project, of course, is the building, a new court facility for the court. And so there's been a lot of discussions around that, and there's probably other people here that know a little bit more detail, maybe Steve, in terms of the financial piece and where that's at. But so at this point, that's a very quick overview of our accomplishments and our goals. And unless the judges would like to add any additional comments, I would be happy to take questions from the group.
All right. Questions or comments from any in the chamber? Okay, let me go chamber first.
Sure, I was just pointing to Mr. Fusco.
Oh. Okay. Mr. Fusco. Pardon me.
Yeah, I know in the past, we've discussed this before during these budget times, and with the new system, I know in the past there's been a lot of hassles with losing files and missing files, and I'm hoping this is going to alleviate that. Is that what you're...
Yes, that's the plan.
Is that going to alleviate that totally, hopefully?
Yes, this will be the first time in terms of the judge's staff that we will actually have the ability to enter information into a system. So I believe at some point, and I know the judges are wholeheartedly wanting to move forward with as reducing the paper as much as we can.
Very good. Thank you.
And then I also want to share a housing program proposal, which we did send you a summary of a project proposal that we're working on. It's a one-pager that was included with your documents, but that would be to expand the program to address the prevalence of evictions, with Akron being ranked in the top, I believe it's the top 4 in terms of eviction rates. And so the judges have put together with staff quite a bit of research in a proposal and what would be needed from a funding level.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Malik, come to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all of the members of our court system who are here. It's always wonderful to hear about some of the changes and some of the programs, and particularly this pilot program around housing. I know we're all working on housing. I guess one of my questions, you mentioned, doing more with less resources, especially compared to similar municipalities. If there were additional funds for staffing, where would those be best used, and what could that allow us to do, particularly around some of our housing cases?
Microphone on? I think it is.
Yeah, nice and close.
All right. We have visited some similar municipalities that have housing programs. We wouldn't have a housing court. That would require, legislation to be passed, at the state level, and another judge. But we would be able to have a program that would sort of mirror what actually Cleveland has, and they have certainly a more robust staff. We kind of took percentages, didn't we, Montrella, on our evictions compared to theirs. So, our program wouldn't be nearly as expensive as theirs, but, it would certainly be mediation focused, and I mean, I think it's best for landlords and tenants when people are able to either work things out and stay in the property or move out peacefully, and there's a date set that everybody agrees on. Also, we would have a social worker, so those who could not stay in their current housing, they'd be able to meet with a social worker, and that person would be a housing specialist in the area that would make sure that, they were able to move or transition into another home instead of being without a home. And, this would take, a couple of mediators, I think, how many, 2 full-time magistrates, right? And in addition to that, the social worker position and a support staff for the program.
Thank you, Judge. The ODR program right now, the Dispute Resolution Mediation Program, that's currently grant funded through the Ohio Supreme Court, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. They're paying for that right now.
And how long is that going to continue?
Well, you know how grants are, they don't last forever generally. So, I don't know the exact timeline. It does provide us with a tool, and actually, the link that was sent to you, the Chief Justice complimented, our implementation of the ODR, but, it's not going to go on forever. So I wish I had a good answer for you, but I don't know how long that grant funding is going to be available.
Okay, what is the amount of that grant funding, Ms.
I'm sorry, what was that?
What is the amount of the grant funding from the Ohio Supreme Court?
So what we have now is the platform that was purchased through a vendor, Matterhorn, by the Supreme Court. So they funded that through the Supreme Court. We are using our existing staff, which, Magistrate Hartway can tell you that, it's been a substantial commitment, but it's been very effective. People are using, and if you're able to watch the link where she's presenting how successful it's been with people using the system.
Thank you very much. And so this proposal is for roughly $560,000 to expand that program.
That's correct.
And it's not reflected in this current budget, is that?
That's correct.
And I guess, Mr. Fricker, what has been the discussion from the administration side around that?
We, have gotten the proposals. We're kind of reviewing that. I think the intent is to have some discussions with the judges in terms of what's the appropriate steps to take going forward.
Okay. So it's still maybe something that may be considered to be funded this year?
I can't answer whether it would be funded this year. I'll say that this is something that we are evaluating and we will see.
Okay, thank you. I guess I would encourage that maybe this is a point of discussion that we can have over the next few weeks as we continue these hearings and move towards the passage by the end of the month. Obviously, council is engaged in its own initiatives around housing, and obviously the administration is as well. And so I think we all want to be on the same page. And so if there is...
Absolutely. We're definitely looking to cooperate. This was our best answer, and we spent a lot of time on this. It's not like we just came up with it overnight. We visited other courts and spent a long time on the budget items, but this is our answer to, what has been called a housing crisis in Akron with the eviction rates. And, even though the ODR has been successful, still, we're number one in the state for evictions. So, as far as housing goes, and the current system we have is just not working. So we have to try something else. So this is our solution to that problem.
Absolutely, and I think that having such a proposal from the entirety of the court carries a whole lot of weight. So I think it's something that's worthy of continued study over the next few weeks, and we could see what's possible. And particularly want to thank Magistrate Hardaway. I know, those words from the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court are really appreciated. I know how much work has gone into this, so thank you.
Yes, we're very proud of her.
I just want to add one thing as a component to this is also a criminal component that I would be overseeing. So that would be your housing code violations, failure to make repairs. What we'd like to do with part of this is I would take on a separate, it wouldn't be a specialized docket through the Supreme Court, it'd just be a court docket where those cases would be transferred to me. And then what I would do, because I think what we find is that most of those cases where it's owner occupied, it's not a matter of people not wanting to make the repairs, they don't have the ability to make the repairs. And a lot of times there's other things going on with them as well. They might have mental health issues, it might be, they're elderly, mobility issues, no matter what it is. So what we'd like to do, and this won't cost any extra money, but if we have a housing court specialist, this would help with this too, working with the city and working with different agencies to help people make those repairs, try to get in on it before criminal charges are filed. So we met with the housing administrator, and very few cases actually come through as criminal charges, but he said he's got a backlog of over 1,000 that are ready to be charged. So that's significant, and so that's part of this whole proposal too. And with that, you know, for me to do that, it's not going to cost any additional money, but what we will need is support and money in place to help these people make those repairs.
Mr. Chair, just one small follow-up. I know we want to keep it to the program.
Yeah, keep the budget.
Yeah, I guess I would just say, just to the, you know, looking at this total amount of money, I think maybe it might be helpful if there's more extensive information that could be shared. I think the one-pager is helpful, but to have some more detailed information with particular costs and breaking out that $560,000, if that could be shared with council, I think that would be very helpful as we review this.
And I have a breakdown. I will give you a copy of it.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Holland, I'll come to you in just a moment. Mr. Fricker, going back to budget, here's 74. Explain you got the 1.9 million. Explain what's happening there under 2021 and then.
Yes, so this is the Special Projects Fund. So this is the fund that has been collecting money for several years in order to finance the new courthouse project.
Okay.
That project is now going forward. You'll see that $13 million down in the equipment, construction, and property. Mm-hmm. That was the initial contribution to the project for the purchase of the building and for some of the construction. So that payment has already been made. They're going to start construction
And
here.
you said we already have notes out on that?
That is correct,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, great. Ms. Holland?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And welcome, judges and Ms. Jackson. It's always nice to see you outside a courtroom. I just have a couple of questions, and they're primarily designed to help our neighbors and friends who are watching today's session. I want to make sure that everyone understands that as I'm reading your proposal, exactly where we are in terms of proposed increases in staffing. Do we have an actual net increase in proposed staffing here?
If that's a question regarding our current budget, there's no increase in the budget for the judges at this point that we've, outside of the housing proposal.
Okay, thank you. I also wanted to chime in and express my support for your ODR program and for just the overall expansion of access and understanding where we're talking about the eviction process. We always like to see Akron make the news, and yet at the same time to make the news for high eviction rates is not something that any of us aspire to. I applaud your use of innovation in inclusion of social services and assistance to make this process more easily understood and more fair, and appreciate what you're doing. I would join my colleague in encouraging you to consider seeking some additional support for the ODR program going forward and for other measures that allow that eviction process to be a process that enables more folks to experience the process in a way that is fair and humane and truly accessible. So thanks for coming today and for the information you've supplied.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And Ms. Amobian, I see your hand. Ms. Amobian?
Can you hear me, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I'm in a plane and we're taxiing, and that's why I'm trying my best to follow everything. I've only heard part of what we discussed about the eviction problem that we have in Akron. So what I'm going to do, because it sounds like the court has provided some additional information, what I'm interested in knowing is how many individuals we have pending eviction today. And I understand there's a process, and I haven't heard everything because I can't hear very well. Now, if you've already addressed this, I can listen to the tape. I don't want you to repeat anything. Thank you.
Mr. Mobian, we had a very difficult time. Apparently, an airplane is not the most conducive place, but we had a very difficult time making out what you said there. And it looks like she's froze. All right. Any other questions or comments? Right. Thank you. Thanks each and every one of you. And the recurring theme I hear every year, and I've heard it for a whole bunch of years, and it's not about a courthouse this year. The recurring theme I hear is that we are doing just as much, if not more, with half the staff of some of the other towns in Akron. So we continue to congratulate you on that. And I think, as anyone would say, this and more will do. So thank you very, very much.
Mr. Chair, I can see that Councilwoman Holland has her.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair? Councilwoman Holland has her hand raised.
I'm sorry. Okay, Ms. Holland.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, I could hear most of what Councilwoman Amobian was asking, and I think she was interested in understanding what the current volume of eviction cases is. And I'd like to know that too. Where are we today compared to 6 months ago or a year ago?
Sure. So in the handout with all the colors in the graph, there's a breakdown of the civil case filings. And under the forcible entry detainer evictions, we are currently at 2021, there were 2,407. Before the pandemic, our average numbers were around 3,800. So again, I had mentioned about 80%, 70, 80%, we're getting back up to the numbers we were pre-pandemic.
That's in the information that you passed out to us, is it not?
Yes.
I know you'd said that earlier.
Yes, so
okay.
It's the 2021 eviction numbers are listed on the document.
Okay, excellent, thank you.
I think that Montrella said this, Ms. Jackson said this, but our numbers are increasing in all of our cases. So during the pandemic, they did go down, but we're starting to get busier as we were pre-pandemic. So I see the eviction cases rising again to prior levels.
Thank you. Okay, I'm looking to see if they're, all right. Okay, thank you so much again for being with us, and thank you for all you do. Mr. Fricker, who will be hearing from next?
So next will be the Municipal Court Clerk.
Okay, thank you. Real close.
Good afternoon. I'm Debbie Walsh, the current Clerk of Courts, and I want to just thank the Council President Somerville, Budget Chairman Freeman, and the rest of the Council members for this opportunity to discuss the Clerk's goals and objectives and our budget for the coming year. So, and honestly, most of these were Jim Laria's accomplishments, as I only took over in late November, so put this together, but our office did, probably the biggest thing is we adjusted and maintained our office operations 24 hours a day throughout the year while facing some very unique challenges due to the pandemic. But we did maintain our 24/7, and that is just a service to the entire community. We continue to work with the judges and the court administrator to replace our current operating computer system and update our case management system. That's, as you just heard, that's an ongoing process, but there's been a lot of work put in by everyone to get to this point. We continue to expand e-filing of traffic tickets and issued by our various police agencies within the courts district. We did purchase additional computers in order to bring our workstations up to date. You will see that's also in my objective for next year because we're only about halfway there. I have people in my office who are on work day and have they do have an email, but they don't have a computer that can accept email. So we probably still have 9 dummy computers that they can get the information they need to do their job, but they do not have an email access. So if I have an all-staff email or something, I have to print it out and publish it downstairs as well as sending it out to those that do have email. So we're working very hard to get this up to date. And that is obviously something that we accomplished a little bit on because we did get new computers, but we need that many more. And we just continued to operate and stay within our budget during these difficult times. But to lead into what our goals and objectives are, one of the things we started doing is to ensure that all of our deputy clerks undergo online training, and that is obviously a challenge based on what I just told you. So we had set up 3 training computers, and so they are having to take this Tyler University course, and it's in total about 14 to 16 hours that we want them to accomplish over the next 4 weeks so that they're much more familiar with working online. I know most of these people have computers at home and do some things, but this is to just get used to the day-to-day and everything that they're doing online, because a lot of my people function and they function very well, but they're not functioning in an online environment, so we need to get them up to that point. Which leads me into just continue to work with the judges and the court administrator to successfully launch Odyssey, which is the name of the case management system within this whole Tyler umbrella. And it's taking, I just feel that it's important that my people who are not used to being on, they're used to their own, to the case management system we have, but it obviously, as I said, it can operate without being online. So we're going to get them used to how all of these systems function and how you can work back and forth between it. One of the became a goal and objective very quickly is we will be working with the city administration, the police department, the judges, the court administrator, and our camera vendor, Vera Mobility, to implement all the necessary changes we need based on changes in the law to be able to resume the school camera program. Our goal is to have that up and ready to start in August so that it's ready for back to school. But again, it involves updating the current system that we're on as well as updating the system that we're going to. So we are working towards that. I will be discussing, but we didn't look at it. We have a proposal from our current vendor for between 34 and 42,000, depending on one item that they need to determine to be able to get the software and the system in line to create that. So I will be coming to Mr. Fricker to discuss it, but it is a problem, and we probably will need 2 additional staff people, and it's mentioned briefly within the budget, but those are 2 objectives that we do want to get it back up and running, and that's what it's going to take to get it done. My 4th point was that we do need to purchase additional computers in order to bring the workstations up to date and enable our entire staff to host or participate in virtual meetings or online trainings at their own individual workstation rather than having to have them go over to the ones we created for them. Continued cooperation and participation with the Judicial Division and the City Administration regarding the layout and planning of the new court facility, and continue to work within the city's budgetary allowances and operate in an efficient manner and provide the service necessary to our constituents. As far as the additional computers, that's one thing I would need to speak with Mr. Fricker on, because the money in the budget, now that I've seen it, does not, there was $100,000 allocated last year and only $37,000 was spent. And then this year, they allocated $65,000. In terms of looking at it, I know it's going to take $33,000 to get the equipment that I need to have workstations for every employee in the business. So that would be one possible change I would.
So you have had those conversations?
No, we've had some conversation, but not to this, now that I've found out that we don't have these computers. And then I saw the budget and realized that there's probably not enough in there for.
So I will say, so we have $42,000 budgeted in the line item where the computers would hit. These are typically purchased out of the AMSIS fund. So assuming there's sufficient fund balance to add additional dollars, we can do that in the form of an amendment this year.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And I think that covers what. The only other thing I noticed, and this is one, and I don't know if I can explain it, but if you're looking at my, I don't know if you want the blue page or the, this one, but when it breaks down in terms of labor under my Clerk operating cost, the 2021 budget, and I know that we're not really talking about that, but I have a concern, is because the total says $2,493,630, and then 61,010 has the exact same number, and then there's another $54,000 that's not included in that total. And it transfers across everything that I've seen, even in last year. So I don't know where it is or what it means, but if we were using that number, I don't think it was an accurate number.
So we could talk after this. The budget amounts that are included in here were based on the payroll projection that the system generated,
Okay.
Which should be sufficient to cover your payroll costs this year.
Okay. And would that also explain why the OPER's employer contribution actually went down?
According to my numbers here, the OPER's employee contribution should have gone up just slightly from what we had last year. But,
From what I show, it shows the 2021 budget is $349,110, and the 2022 budget $347,414.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the. We'll talk off.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't know if this was the right place. I apologize if it wasn't meant to come out here. So, otherwise,
okay.
Thank you. I'm open for questions.
Okay, thank you. Questions from anyone in chambers? And please, budget-related questions. Thank you.
Yes, sir. I guess I would ask, we have folks coming here and presenting to us about the goals and objectives. It's hard not to ask any questions about the goals and objectives.
I understand that, and what I would encourage you, if you could have those, if you could have those either off with this meeting, maybe through phone, through email, and I understand what you're saying, but if we can stick to numbers today, that would be good, because I know there's some questions that I had here from the courts I'd like to ask today. I'm going to hold off, so if there's any budget-related questions, that would be good.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So, Ms. Walsh, thank you for being here. It's good to see you. I guess I have a question regarding the school zone camera program revenue, right? So it appears that the program is not currently ongoing. Has that impacted the revenue over the last year?
It has. So that revenue typically goes into the Child Safety Fund, where we charge the school resource officers. So that fund really has two funding sources. It's the primarily the reimbursements we get through Akron Public Schools, and then it's supplemented with, to the extent that we have camera revenue. So that camera revenue is not really reflected in that budget. And that's why we used to charge upwards of 12 or 13 officers to that budget. Now it's only 8. So that reflects the money that we get from the schools. So to the extent that if the program is stood up again, we would have to both add some expenses to cover both the staff in the clerk's office, as well as the amount that we would pay to the camera vendor because they take an amount per ticket. But then that would be supplemented with the additional revenue that we get through the program.
Okay, so I guess when did the program stop, and so how much revenue have we foregone or projected?
So it stopped sometime last year. We used to get approximately $1.2 million in that program.
Annually?
Yes.
Okay, and so when did it stop last year?
Stopped sometime last year, yes.
Okay, so do we have a sense of how much revenue we generated last year from that?
I can get you that number.
Okay, and so it's unclear whether we'll generate any revenue from that this year?
It's unclear, yeah.
Okay, so it's not reflected in this budget?
It's not reflected in this budget.
Okay, thank you.
And, I mean, going back 12, 15 years, I know when we initiated that program, the promise was anything that was generated, any revenue that was generated, net revenue, would go back into safety concerns around
It has to be
schools.
related to school safety, yes.
Correct.
So it was both for the SROs and for if there were some like traffic upgrades and things like that we did.
Right, and that was a promise that was made because we wanted to offset any accusations that might be made about money grab for whatever, so, okay, thank you.
Just one follow-up.
Yes.
How are those additional police officers being funded if, given the shortfall?
So we have more in the general fund then. Yeah, so
Okay.
in reality, there's 15 or 16 SROs at any given time. There's only enough revenue to cover 8 of them.
Okay. I guess, Mr. Chair?
Yes,
Just
yes.
parenthetically, I appreciate that we need to be timely and that we need to conserve our time, but, this is the first I'm hearing that this program isn't going on, and, if there isn't enough time in the schedule to fully, delve into these questions, right, it's not clear to me, like, when an additional time is, and so I don't know whether it's worth, having additional time in the schedule, but really it does seem like we're doing a disservice to artificially cut off some of these conversations that it would be fully, it would be helpful to go into more depth on some of these things.
And I appreciate that, and just my habit has been throughout the years is I'm making notes of who I want to talk to about what program, because I know it can, when we start talking program, it can be a never-ending conversation. So that's the thing I want to guard against, and I would encourage you, if there's programs about the cameras or we have anything from the courts, I think usually our folks that come, you're open to any questions from council members regarding that. But I just want us so much to try to stick to questions of numbers today.
I appreciate that. I guess I just would say that for some of these things, it would be helpful for all of council to know.
Oh, okay. And you know what? I think, be it public safety or whatever, we have in the past invited folks in because we hear something here that's piqued our interest or was new information for us. I think using our committee system, or if we use our retreat system, that is a good time to hear that. Yeah, I appreciate that. Absolutely. Thank you. All right, looking for any other comments or questions. Mr. Neal, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just want to ask about our process, sir. I've been in budget hearings now.
Okay, is there a money question here?
Yes, sir, there is.
Okay, go ahead and state it.
Mr. Chairman, it's about us being able to address the budget issues that are before us.
Okay, so right now we are on, we're talking with the municipal court clerk. So the question for the municipal court clerk would be?
Well, sir, I was following the question of my colleague, and then it was asked to be sent through an email. I would like to be able to, finish hearing that out from my standpoint for a point of information.
Okay, you want to have a conversation with Mr. Neal later on, Mr. Malik? I think he's asking where the thought was going, the conversation that we were having.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I'm looking for budget questions, Mr. Neal, all right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to move on. This is the second time, kind of getting off kilter, so I'm going to thank you for being here today. And next, we're going to have Human Resources come forward, please, if we could, please.
Mr. Chairman,
Thank you.
point of order, sir.
Who do we have
Mr.
coming
Chairman,
next,
point
Mr.
of order,
Fricker?
sir.
Yes, it is the Department of Human Resources.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, point of order, sir. Mr. Chairman, point of order.
No point of order, no rules have been broken, so we're going to have Human
Mr.
Resources
Chairman, the
come
board
at
has
this time. Mr. Neal,
Chairman,
please
sir,
stop
we operate by
interrupting.
Robert's
Thank you.
Rules of Order.
And if needs be, I can,
Mr. Chairman, we operate by Robert's Rules of Order. When
all right, we're going to hear from Human Resources now. I'm going to ask if you would please introduce yourselves, and if you would please introduce your staff. Thank you.
This is
Hello, good afternoon, Madam President and
Excuse me. Oh, thank you.
Nice and close with, thank you.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today to discuss Human Resources Department and what we've been doing, a lot of different things we've been doing. I'd like to introduce the staff that with me here today, and that's Stacy Doty, who is the Assistant Human Resource Director, and Myra Snipes, who is our Diversity Manager, Training Manager. And I may ask them to come and say a few words here on a couple topics, but wanted to give a overview of what HR has been up to. I started in the HR department last June, about early June, and we have really been focusing on becoming a much more robust HR department for the city, focusing on strengthening, centralizing, and really organizing the Human Resource Department and clarifying the functions of our employees and identifying really what their priority services will be for the city. That in itself was a big thing to do, to really make sure that they were providing the services and support for all the different departments. HR generally, just the key functions of our department, focus around recruitment, retention, performance management, training and development, compensation management, policy and procedure enforcement, employee benefits administration, leave administration, EEO compliance, safety compliance, and really all other employment matters for the city. So one of the big things last year that we've accomplished, looking at the 21 accomplishments, we continued from the year 20, and in my role in HR as HR director, also continued on with the coordination, development, and administration of the COVID policies and procedures and safety protocols for all employees of the city. We continue to track and monitor all the data that's related to COVID and provide updated information to all the employees. This is ongoing. We're right now the situation has become better here in Summit County in terms of our numbers, but to continue to monitor for any future surges or issues out there. So that's an ongoing project of ours, job of ours. We also, one of the big things we did in 21 was assist with the finance department in implementing a new Workday software system, HRIS system for the city. We have created last year many computer lab programs for employees to give them user training in Workday and for helping them with the enrollment of health benefits. This has really been a game changer for the city in terms of utilizing this new computer software system. It has assisted us in a variety of ways with performance management matters, as well as with, of course, payroll matters and just employee record keeping. As we continue to use this system and really take full advantage of it, that's our goal that we will continue to do moving forward. We have last year also accomplished continue to look at our HR policies and procedures. We will continue to do that this year as well, of course, and we are always looking to update these procedures. And two new policies that were put in place last year. One was the parental leave policy, which many of you may have heard of. That has really been very beneficial to employees of the city, has really helped with the work-life balance for employees, and has really assisted them financially during situations where they go home and are mom and dad, and they have some paid time for that, to do that. We also added to our benefits program gender-affirming benefits, which also has been something that we have recognized is important to have for all our employees, for those employees that need it, I should say. So that is something also that we have added. Like I said, we continue to evaluate and revise all our city procedures and policies and try to avoid those kind of barriers. This is a big issue for us to employment, to be able to apply and get into the workforce, and for advancement. I'm going to talk a little bit about that when I get into the 22 goals, but I just wanted to point out that this has been something that is very important. We've worked actually with the Racial Equity and Social Justice Task Forces to do presentations with them and explain our policies surrounding workforce development and what kind of challenges HR faces in the world today, post-COVID. One of the other things that we did do last year was we have, I'm big on committees and really like hunkering down and focusing on very specific ways to deal with problems and getting a group of SMEs in there to really focus on issues in HR. We formed several committees. One we did was the HR newsletter committee, and that was something that produced an HR newsletter recently. Many of you may have seen that. It is really goes to employee engagement, which I think was something that the city really needed, and has been met with a lot of positive feedback, and hope to see that as an ongoing thing for HR, where we will be engaging employees and letting them participate in this newsletter as well. We also created a mission committee, which was really to focus on what the mission is for the city, identify our core goals and values of the HR department, and this was presented actually in our recent newsletter. And another big thing that we did was we continued to promote and increase the enrollment of employees through the Stark State program that we have, which it goes to workforce development. And Myra, I don't know if you want to just say a couple of words regarding that success of that program. We actually did receive a very prestigious award, the Compass Award, also through the Mayor's Youth Leadership Council. You can talk about both those things, maybe.
Thank you, Director Atkins. As you stated, our workforce development program, we are entering our third year. This program is offered to all employees, from temporary, seasonal, to even yourselves. So it's going very well. This year we'll be able to provide some statistics. Several have received associate degrees and certificates as a result of our tuition-free program with the partnership with Stark State College. As far as with the Mayor Youth Leadership Council, we were pleased to be honored by the state of Ohio receiving the Compass Award for our virtual financial literacy program. In fact, now that the state of Ohio is making that a requirement, financial literacy, they would like to use us as a target as far as helping them to implement this statewide. So we are very pleased and honored to receive that award from the state of Ohio.
Thank you, Myra. So HR has really been working on assisting other departments on daily various HR employment matters and helping them achieve their goals through office structure reorganization, creating workflow systems, and hiring appropriate staff. So that has been some of the big functions that we do routinely, actually, in HR. For 2022 goals and objectives, of course, we would continue on with the progress we've made in the past year, and we will, of course, continue to form more committees to focus on other areas. One of the primary objectives for HR this year is to focus in the area of recruitment of qualified applicants and the retention of our current employees. This has been a challenge, as many of us would know, nationwide. We are in the phase what people call the Great Resignation, actually, where people are leaving the workforce. People are reevaluating what they want to do after post-COVID. And so it's been a difficult situation and a major challenge for all employers. City of Akron, no different. And we have received less than average applications for city jobs. Keeping this in mind, we are trying to approach this with a variety of incentives and working with other HR groups throughout Ohio also, and you know, in the nation really, trying to find best practices and ways in which we can do some outreach. What we did, one thing was we have hired, for the first time, the HR has hired a recruitment and retention specialist, and she has really, so far, done a wonderful job, has really done a lot of posting on a variety of platforms, done a lot of outreach to help make sure that people in the city are applying for jobs within the city. And I'm going to let Stacy talk a little bit about that, if you don't mind. We are planning on hiring a second recruiter for safety forces to just focus on safety forces as well.
Good afternoon. Our recruitment and retention specialist has hit the ground running. She's established relationships with different organizations already. She's only been on a little over a month, so she hasn't been here very long, but she's has experience and an enthusiasm for this position and this work, and she's really excited. Everything that we throw at her, she's gung-ho and excited to learn all about our positions, and we're working on other things for retention and utilizing our new workday system and some of the surveys and things that we can put through for new employees, existing employees, promoted employees, employee pulse surveys, and some of those other things. So those are things that we're going to be working on for the next year, trying to get more established processes for just tracking employee satisfaction, and that will also maybe help us see how our supervisors and managers are doing.
Thank you, Stacy. Another major objective that is underway right now that we are working on very actively is to provide mandatory supervisory training. And this is something that is very much needed here. And the areas that we are going to be providing training on, and this is going to be a nice program where we're really getting some experts to come in and who have some expertise in these areas of performance, leadership, performance management, leadership training, workplace diversity, and discipline, working with social media in the workplace, a variety of very important issues that employees are dealing with every day. And I think it's really going to be helpful for management. They are really looking for this type of training. So this is something we're really going to be hopefully doing on an annual basis. And I'll just say another major program for this year also is that we're going to be focusing a lot on wellness initiatives. We're living in times now where people are recovering from a public health crisis. There's a variety of issues going on around the world, and focusing on employee health, both mentally and physically, is going to be something that we're really going to place more emphasis on to help reduce stress in the workplace and to increase the overall well-being of our employees and show them that we do care, we do appreciate what they do every day in public service. So this is something that we'll be putting a lot of emphasis on. So those are some of the three big things. We do things every day, but these are some of our big ones I wanted to point out.
A lot on your plate. Mr. Fricker, I should ask you. You said you're calling it a recruitment specialist. Is that reflective of the one individual, one more employee we're seeing?
Yeah, that person is already on, and then there's an additional half a person each in the police and fire budgets. Okay. So that's why they're both now at something 0.5. We're splitting that evenly so that recruitment specialist can focus just on safety forces.
Okay, very good. And then question, as far as the workforce costs, are those split out amongst a bunch of different departments, or do we see that in?
When you say the workforce costs,
I'm sorry, the new system that we're using.
Oh, Workday.
Workday.
Yes, so what we do is there is a chargeback that we do. So those costs are paid out of our IT, which is our information technology fund, but then we charge back to the departments based on their number of full-time employees to reimburse that fund for that cost.
Okay.
Yeah.
Questions? Yes, Mr. Malik?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Adkins. Thank you, everyone who presented. Clearly, there's a lot going on. I really appreciate your work. My one question is, throughout this entire budget, there's obviously, significant benefits costs. One of the biggest expenses to the city is healthcare. Are there investments that we can make in, proactive steps to have a healthy workforce that will help us with the long-term healthcare costs that we're facing as a city?
Yeah, I mean, that is one of the reasons why we're forming a wellness committee, and we will be having people input from other sources. We're going to have our third-party administrator, Oswald, come in, and they're going to be providing us with a lot of ideas and incentives out there and ways in which we can invest into good programs for our employees. A big area that we're also focusing on is safety for our, just assistance for our safety forces, and how that can be something that can be beneficial in the long run to try and, right after a critical incident, for instance, having someone available to help employees and directing them to get the type of help they need after they view a very difficult situation. For all employees, but safety forces in particular, we see this as being a big thing. And the goal is that overall these employees have a better way to manage how they, their work, and avoid future illnesses or stress or problems, and that's the goal, to do that. So
thank you very much. You mentioned safety forces. I think a lot of that work is currently done through the Safety Forces Support Center, right? So, and not necessarily in-house. Is it possible we might expand some of that in-house as well?
Well, that is what we're looking at doing. We are actually working with SUMA. Actually, we've talked to some doctor there, and are trying to find a way to have some kind of internal program, not just to rely on an external, outside place, but some place that the city can offer for employees to go to directly. How we're going to do that is still in discussion, so I don't know right now, but
absolutely.
That is our goal. Yeah.
It's great to hear, just because it is such a critical thing, the things that our safety forces see every day. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Fusco?
And I don't know, in police and fire and some other departments, I know that the training piece is, often handled within the department budget, but there's some other initiatives I know that we've taken on in terms of equity and so on and so forth. Do we charge those back, and have you ever considered doing that? Does that make sense? Because then I think a lot of these initiatives could perhaps be funded within departments too.
We have done that in the past, where we've had internal classes that have been put on by the Department of Human Resources that we charge a per enrollee fee on those. We've been doing a lot more online stuff, I think, in the past couple years, so we haven't had a charge for those, but that is something that we do periodically.
Okay, just curious. Noted, and I'm assuming this is within yours, is the actual budget and then the expense side, and it's not a whole lot, so it's probably just within the departments themselves. But I just had noted that the training numbers were kind of low in terms of the expense side for 21 versus budget side. So
yeah,
right.
We have.
I was going to say that's reflective of just the COVID environment and the fact that people have not, traveled,
Sure, yeah.
as much as they did in the past. So.
Makes sense. Thank you. Thanks.
Ms. Connor?
My question is, the Mayor's Youth Leadership Council, how many students are involved in that, and are you at full capacity with those students?
As far as the Mayor's Youth Leadership Council, we were unique because of COVID. So we have on file, we have at least 80 plus students, and we're always open for new students to be a part of our program.
Thank you.
And following up on that, let's see, we have, the expense there is primarily always service contracts. Remind me again who those contracts would be with.
Which page are we looking at?
I'm sorry, on page 85, the Mayor's Youth Leadership Council.
So that's the Sharice Freeman.
Yes, we have a coordinator.
Okay. Okay, very
Service
good.
contract coordinator.
Okay, very good.
She assists with the grant writing and working with the students also with Myra.
Okay. Thank you. I think I see the hand of Miss Holland, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm combing through these pages very carefully, and I think this has been touched on a little bit, but I just want to raise my hand. I'm a big fan of our human resources function. It is extraordinarily progressive, and the programs and benefits and level of service and awareness and just state-of-the-art management is really exceptional. And in that regard, there's a straight line connection between investment and wellness initiatives and return on that investment, as there also is with supervisory training and reduction of risk. So I just want to raise my hand and say that to the extent relatively low line items reflect relatively low prioritization of these things, I would encourage, come back, ask for more. These are two really good investments in the future of the city and in one of our most vital assets, which are our employees. I am delighted every time I hear the word wellness come out of anyone's mouth, and particularly when we're talking about our public safety men and women. So thank you for your presentation, Ms. Atkins.
Thank you very much. We do appreciate that.
Thank you, Ms. Holland. I think we just heard a councilwoman say, come back and ask for more.
Yeah.
So
I wrote that down. I wrote that down.
You know, and as I think about what you do, it's, you know, with HR, if you have a great HR department, it's like, yeah, they're out there somewhere. You got a bad one, you know about it all over the place. So thank you for everything you do. Were there any other questions or comments? All right, thank you so much. Yamini, this is your first time in here as director. Yeah, okay,
Yes,
so welcome, and
thank you.
look forward to a lot of, thank you so much for everything you do. All righty. All right, next we are going to move on to, we've got about 30 minutes left here, and we're going to move on to neighborhood services. And again, for the first time as director here, Mr. Lash, we know who you are, but it's nice to see you sitting there in this capacity.
Thank you, sir.
If you would please go ahead and introduce your team for us, and yourself and then your team. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of council, both here in the chambers and joining us virtually. My name is Euphrancy Lash, and I'm the Deputy Service Director and Director of Neighborhood Assistance. And I have my team here. Behind you, you have division leaders, Dwayne Greger of Housing Compliance, Thomas Tatum, who is overseeing Housing and Community Services, and you have Doug Taylor, I believe he's here, Housing Administration, and you also have Greg Kalel, who's acting administrator for nuisance compliance. So it is my pleasure to be before you this afternoon, representing the Department of Neighborhood Assistance for the year 2020. Again, our department consists of 3 divisions: Housing and Community Services, Housing Compliance Division, and our nuisance compliance. And our key focus every day is promoting strong, safe, and stable neighborhoods through nuisance abatement, housing code compliance, customer service, and resident assistance. In total, we have 40 employees across the division spectrum. As you see, I have my team with me, and they're going to actually, if you see it, if they're available to go through their goals and objectives for their respective divisions. Again, I am proud to serve on this team. We do truly work as a team because this is the real work of the people of the city of Akron. You should have our goals and objectives before you. and we are working to improve services. That's the key that we are working to do every single day, is to improve what we, upon which we have done in the past. And we're anticipating the ARPA rollout and implementation, which we will talk about later. And we want to make sure that we're prepared to deliver on these set goals and objectives. And our primary goals are focused on ensuring that we have a focused and dedicated team to execute the goals that are before you. Some of our key accomplishments that we can talk about, if you find the time, is we received mayoral approval to increase our staff. And I've talked to many of you offline and throughout the years about some of the concerns you've had as far as like high grass and weeds and some of the junk cars, some of the neighborhood issues that we've had. And graciously, the mayor has been very supportive, and we're going to be able to increase staffs across the division. We also were able to work with IT to develop an application this year. We're going to be rolling that out here shortly, which will be very valuable as far as high grass and weeds. We're actually going to be able to enter some of those complaints within an application, which will be entered on our GIS and CityWorks platforms. So that's going to actually help us in working with our contractors. We're actually, again, revamping some of the goals for 22. We're revamping our online 311, which will make it more efficient. And again, we're preparing for the ARPA rollout, which is very important, and a lot of people are anticipating throughout the city. And we're working with the Office of Integrated Development to complete that. And right now, I'm going to ask if it's appropriate, some of our division managers to kind of give us a Cliff Notes version of their goals and objectives for your hearing. So if Mr. Thomas Tatum, if he would actually come forward and actually give that for housing and rehab.
Before Mr. Tatum begins, sure. And welcome, Thomas, please have a seat. I can almost guarantee you that every council member, the 10 members and the 3 at large, are going to want to know more about the application, because
Absolutely.
Spring is coming.
Sure.
And so I think this is kind of something we were talking about, Mr. Malik, is we're going to want you to come into a committee. I'm not speaking for any
Sure.
committee chair.
Absolutely.
We're going to want you to come into a committee one Monday afternoon.
Absolutely.
And we want to hear about that.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank
Be
you.
glad to.
All right. Mr. Tatum, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thomas Tatum, Division Manager, Housing and Community Services. Our main goals for 2022 is to continue our lead hazard reduction demonstration grant, which we are in the middle of, which is a $4.6 million grant we received at the end of 2019, and we are still working with that. Also, we have been in discussions about what the American Rescue Plan Act would look like. Once we understand what that final document is, we will be working to improve that. We look to add at least 2 individuals on staff, one a loan and grant specialist, which we hired within the past month, and we currently have an accounts analyst position that we might be hiring at the end of this month, and we just found out the administrative assistant exam was given yesterday, so we hope to improve that portion of that. Through our relationship with Rebuilding Together, we hope to assist an additional 50 very low income, primarily elderly or disabled individuals with housing rehabilitation program, with minor home repair, and continue to provide technical assistance with planning on OID on their different housing organizations. And basically, that's our main goals for 2022. I would like to add that what we also have worked with through the pandemic and through everything else that's been going on, the supply chain challenges are real, and we are experiencing that through what we've been working with our contractors, working with our nonprofits, and not only that, the quality individuals who are working with these contractors has been a challenge as well. So that's one of the things that not just Akron, but many other cities are dealing with. So that's one of the things that has been a challenge, but we've been handling it.
Mr. Tatum, thank you. You've served the city long and well, and we appreciate what you continue to do. And I remember you when you had no gray hair. So all this work is every bit of it. Thank you. So seriously, Tom, thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you, Mrs. Chair. I'm going to ask Mr. Dwayne Greger to come and represent the Housing Compliance Division.
In that he's going to be getting 2 more employees, we can expect, what, 20 times the work out of his department now? Is that how that goes? Or?
It's going to be a lot more.
Mr. Greger, thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of council. I appreciate you having me here today. The Housing Division...
Your mic? Make sure your mic's on. There we go.
Someone turned me off
there. There we go, nice and close.
I was just in the seat last night for Housing Appeals Board. You would think that I would be better at this. So, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of council. The Housing Division is very pleased that that our goals for 2022 have a much greater chance of being met with the addition of some personnel that we're very pleased to take on. Our overall goal for the year is going to be to continue to fulfill the mayor's goal to drive down the number of days that complaints stay on the books. And we hope to accomplish that in a number of ways, not the least of which is to, should have put these on before I started. We want to work to hire and train additional inspectors, to implement targeted inspections in specified areas of the city and in housing developments in the city, and to increase inspection activities for the mandatory inspection program. We also want to work to rebalance the remaining housing inspection caseloads that are now hovering around 338 per inspector. We want to rebalance those to attempt to get our supervisors away from working on large caseloads so that we can process our rental registrations more efficiently and our administrative penalties more efficiently. Thank you.
Thank you, Dwayne.
Again, thank you. And we look for, probably it's a good time to thank the administration too for hearing council and council saying, here's where we need help. We're on the front lines with our constituents, and we all appreciate a couple new folks here.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And now I'd like to ask Mr. Greg Kalel to come up, who's representing nuisance compliance.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and council members. Thank you for, I appreciate you letting me be here today to discuss this. Nuisance 22 accomplishments and goals are basically centered around one thing, and it's being more efficient with our resources, trying to get to the complaints much quicker, trying to resolve those complaints, again, in a timely fashion. So all our objectives are designed around efficiency and using our resources as efficient and effectively as possible, and partnering with the back end of that with the contractors to do the same.
Thank you, Greg. So, Mr. Chair, as you've heard, we're focused on increasing our efficiency and productivity across the board, across the division. And at this time, we're open to any questions that you all may have.
Excellent. Questions, comments? Ms. Connor.
I just want to say, you know how they say one a day? I at least one a day email all of that team, and I'm so grateful for their prompt responses and their dedication to our neighborhoods. It's easy to take the calls, but it's great to have someone to send them to and help get things done. So my hat's off. I'll try not to bother you every day, but
it's okay.
I do appreciate your prompt response and your commitment to our neighborhoods.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Mr. Fricker, page 86, salaries and wages. We got 245K, 162K, 271K, and then 131 for 2022. What's that fluctuation?
So the 2021 expenses are largely due to a retirement that we had last year. So.
Okay. Other questions or comments? Mr. Fusco?
Yeah, thanks. On 90, this is on page 90, the Housing General Fund, where we are seeing the increase to 4 from 9 employees. Just curious, and I don't know, maybe I'm missing something here, but it looks as though the budget and the expense side from 21 and then the 22 doesn't seem that high, or is it covering the 4?
Well, part of that is reflective of the fact that the employees won't be on for the, they haven't been hired yet, so it's going to take some time to hire them.
So you're looking at, because like we're, over here, I think we're cheering for like as soon as possible, just just FYI.
Yes, Mr. Okay, I'm not sure what order.
Okay, that's fine. Just wanted to ask Mr. Kaleo that I see that the budget for, the nuisance is been increased by quite a few dollars here. So is that going to allow you to either maybe catch up on prior nuisances that have been on the books, or is that going to allow you to hire more contractors for our nuisances, such as high grass? So, yeah. It's on page 88.
You referring to labor?
Service contracts, $540,000 on the nuisance compliance.
160210?
160.
Yeah, so that's the assessed compliance, so that is reflective of both the trash, the litter cleanup contracts, as well as the mowing contracts.
Right, so again, it's been increased, so do you see, as you stated, to be more efficient with, your resources, do you see that we are going to hire more contractors to do this work?
Yes, we will, for trash, litter.
High grass mostly is what I'm concerned about.
At this point, we're still looking at that. Right now, we have 5 contractors, and I believe that was probably sufficient, but again, we're looking at that.
Okay. And I have one other question for, actually, Mr. Greger there, because I see in the housing budget that the service contracts have been increased by, not as much, but at least it's bigger than the last 2 years. So with the service contracts, it's $106,000 on page 90. Is that going to, what would that allow for, the increase in the budget?
So those are the primarily related to board ups that are done by the housing department.
That's exactly what I should have said that, because that's what I was getting at. I don't know if we can have more board ups with the price of lumber. I don't know if it's been an increase, so I don't know if that's going to cover the increase in wood, but it should get us more board ups if we need that.
Well, we're actually seeing board ups trending down. They were leveled off for about 3 years, and last year they did trend down. But the cost of the individual board ups has increased with supply chain issues. The price of plywood has gone through the roof.
Yes.
And we've seen that reflected in the cost that the contractors have bid out for the board ups.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Malley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Lash, and everyone in the department. Really appreciate the information. 2 questions. The first is looking at the housing rehab. I think it's great that we're bringing in additional staff to help roll out that program. Do we know how much we intend to expend in housing rehab grants this year, and any projection?
In housing rehabilitation grants,
Yes.
we're looking to keep the trend going. We have cases that we have under contract right now. We have cases pending. We did lose 2 loan and grant specialists who actually do the financials for the cases. We hope to bring in these 2 people that come in will help us with training, bring that back up to speed. We anticipate the grant will be ending, for the lead grant will be ending in July of next year. We anticipate meeting our goal and expending those funds. So to give you an actual projection for this year, it really depends on how quickly we can bring people in and get them trained up.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. I was referring to the housing rehab grants under ARPA.
That's, thank you for that question. Let's see if Mr. Bowman would actually expand on that.
We have budgeted a total of $15 million for housing rehab over the period of ARPA. And I don't know that we have an exact amount because we haven't launched the program yet for 2022. But that is the total amount that we plan on spending.
Okay, do we have any kind of estimate of what we hope to do this year?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't.
So if we look at the ARPA summary that we budgeted about $3,170,000 this year for the existing home rehab.
Okay, thank you. And then the other question, and really glad, like my colleague said, to have the additional staff in housing and in nuisance. I know all of you do an awful lot of work, and it'll be great to get some reinforcements there. I guess the question is, I know there was a discussion about the salary for Mr. Fusco. Do we have a sense of when those housing inspectors will be on the job?
I mean, I think we're going to start the hiring process, immediately after passage of this budget. So, hopefully within a month or two.
Okay.
Yeah, more on our side, we're actually, they're going through the Human Resource Committee, so our managers are going through the process of doing interviews as we speak.
Okay.
So they're making those selections now.
Okay, and there is some time that's needed for training?
Absolutely. I mean, realistically, it's going to take a few months for training to take place and for them to be up to speed, but we are actively engaged in that process.
Thank you very much, sir.
Excellent, thank you. I will go to, let's see, anybody else here in the chambers? Okay, Ms. Holland?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, gentlemen, for the presentations. I really appreciate all that you do. Housing and housing-related issues are really central to our experience as residents of this city, and I know how hard you work and how much you have on your plates. I'm thrilled at the prospect of adding additional housing inspectors, and I imagine you are too. I'm taking a look, and I'm just trying to understand something. On pages 87 and 88, I see two different spreads here, if you will, for nuisance compliance. And as my colleague pointed out previously, we see a significant increase in service contracts on the one, and then on the preceding, on page 87, we actually see a decrease. And I'm trying to sort of understand what pages 87 and 88 represent, if somebody can sort of clarify this for me. Why are they not in a single spreadsheet?
Because they have they have different funding sources. So page 87 represents the nuisance operations funded out of the general fund. Okay. So this is primarily where the service contracts in there are largely related to animal control. So those are we have two contracts. One is with Summit County Department of Animal Control, and one is with the Humane Society. So those are
page 87.
Yeah, those are page 87. Page 88 represent the nuisance items that we assess for. So, okay. And those are largely where the litter cleanups and the mowing contracts are located.
Okay. Do you see any potential for reducing the cost of mowing contracts?
Well, I know one thing that we have been doing with the city-owned mowing contracts is we've been transitioning those over from private contractors to our parks maintenance division. So potentially, we've kind of done that for as I said, the city-owned properties. These are the ones where there's a nuisance identified that we dispense contractors out to do those properties. So potentially depending on how the mowing of the city-owned properties goes, we could look at potentially expanding some of that into city employees if that works out well.
Bringing it all in-house.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And just to follow up on Ms. Holland's question, would that coincide with the fact that we're doing less seasonal work and going to be bringing more employees in? of using our own folks to do our property?
Potentially, yeah. So I know one of the issues that was identified, there were a couple issues identified, for the city-owned properties and why we're choosing to do more of those in-house. So one is the difficulty in hiring seasonal staff now. And then two was the fact that, there's a lot of training that has to be done with some of the equipment, and, the parks maintenance manager basically identified that with the seasonal people, we have a lot more issues with, breaking the mowers and that type of thing, and the full-time staff, is a lot more, they're better trained to handle that machinery, and we have less breakdowns of that equipment. So that was one of the other reasons that we chose to do that.
Then I had one last question. I don't know if it's page 87 or 88, the monies that we receive from the neighborhood, or from the rental registration program, are those reflected in page 87 or 88?
Those really wouldn't be from that. Those would be reflected on page, so those are housing dollars, so those would be page 90, really.
Yep, I missed it all together, okay. Okay, very good. Any other questions or comments? Hey, thank you so much. We're really looking forward to the spring now. We're going to hit the spring with a whole new set of excitement. I know council people are, and appreciate everything you're doing. And gentlemen, thank you so very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of council, thank you.
Thank you.
And finally, do we have public service yet?
Public service.
Okay. Think you can do it all in 8 minutes, Mr. Ludell?
Mr. Fricker said no overtime, so I have 8 minutes.
Oh, yeah, I know he did. I know he did. All right. Welcome, Mr. Ludell.
Thank you, sir.
You probably take up more paper than anyone else in the entire budget, understandably. I hate to use that 8-minute comment, but you take up about, what do we have here, about 40-plus pages. So you feel free to begin. Mr. Fricker, is there anything that you want to warn us about here? Okay.
No, I'll let Mr. Ludell present the millions of dollars from his department.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Budget Committee, and the rest of council. I will start. I will just basically go over what we've accomplished, highlight those, not go word for word. I'm sure you have all those, but try to highlight, and if I don't mention something, we can always go back and answer the questions. But we'll start with engineering. One of the accomplished last year, we received a National Recognition Award for the American Council of Engineering Companies for Main Street. We did some improvements at the airport. We decoupled runway 19, and then we resurfaced 725. We bid over $27 million worth of projects last year. We applied and received 45-year loans on our sewer project, basically for the large diameter lining project. Received Great Lakes Restoration Initiative grant for $650,000, and what that's going to do, the restoration down at the end of the tunnel, we're going to take that next part of the river to the north, remove 3 low-head dams, which is the impairment to the river, which will improve the quality of the river down there. We received an additional $1.8 million to take down the Gorge Dam. Public Works, OPWC, we applied for funding of $1.6 million to do the Mall Avenue project, and we received $3.9 million for the East Exchange project. Both those projects will bid this spring. Mall Evans probably next week. East Exchange is a little bit after that, and both those projects we hope to be underway and completed yet this year in 2020. Some of the other highlights, we achieved full operation at the end of last year at the wastewater plant on our BioSep, which takes our capacity from 220 million gallons a day up to 280 million gallons a day. So those are some huge numbers, but if you look back just 10 years ago, when we started those improvements in the system, we've increased the capacity at the wastewater plant from 130 million gallons a day 10 years ago up to 280. So full treatment, and that's quite impressive of what this system does, and not having any bypasses into the river. So when they say that the river's back, we are a big part of that improvement to the river. Some of the other highlights from last year, we did a project in Cascade parking deck, LED lights. We did purchase them from a minority contractor, and the contractor that installed them was a small business operation. So engineering has been working very closely with Sheena Fain, our diversity and inclusion manager. We have obtained a few projects. We've been very successful. It's been a tough year for contractors alike, but we've got some big wins in that department. Going on to AWR, or Akron Waterways Renewed, we are in our third amendment. We have completed 27 consent decree projects, and the last 3 are either under construction or they are being designed as we speak. We have the one on Memorial Parkway. Later this summer, we will finish that project. There's a little bit of storm work on Hickory Street. And then the other 2 projects for the North Side Tunnel, which I think most of you have heard, we're in negotiations with US EPA on going to a smaller tunnel than designed or proposed in the consent decree, not designed. So the talks are ongoing. I can't really comment any more than that. I hopefully will have more news for you in a few weeks on that. The Blue Herring Homecoming, unfortunately, we didn't hold that last year because of COVID. We are going to do it this year. It'll be on June 17th, which is a Friday, and you all will receive something on that. Last year we did pass out 110 rain barrels, even though we didn't have the event. We held something, I believe it was at Patterson Park, did like a drive-through, and people picked up their rain barrels. We did a lot of public outreach last year. Even with COVID, we did it online. We are very proud that this was our 6th year of our all-student engineering program. Through the all-student engineering program, the city continues to leverage partnerships with professional service firms throughout the pandemic. We retained 19 and of an average 21 firms who usually participate in the program. This cycle accepted 45 of these students were entered, and 34 of those students did get an internship last year through those firms. So even though the pandemic, we were able to still keep that going, and it's even bigger this year. Street lighting, I know that's all, you all get those calls about street lightings. Last year, we had over 1,000 outings reported, and then we got those restored. We're still working with those agreements to try to improve with First Energy to do a conversion to LED, and that's ongoing. Traffic engineering, we fabricated and installed over 2,500 signs. We did all the pavement marking on all the resurfacing, which with the resurfacing budget increasing, this council did approve a new paint truck a few years back, and that's been a great improvement. We've had a few staff added there. We have 23 full-time employees in traffic. So we're doing a lot of those markings in-house. Previous to that truck, a lot of that was subbed out by the resurfacing contractor, and we're doing that in-house, which obviously saves money. Plans and permits, We issued over 1,100 permits last year, and I know we talk about downtown housing units that were added, but last year alone, there were 66 new home permits issued in the city. Those are mostly all these single-family homes that were built throughout the city, and some of them, I don't believe, even though the permit was issued, some of those haven't been totally completed, but they're underway construction-wise. We did have a contractor recently on city-owned lots. I believe they're building 38 houses throughout the city. They're small houses, but they're affordable, and with costs right now with construction, that's a positive thing that's going on, and it's throughout the city. I'm ready to jump over to water supply. Water supply division leveraged technology advances to continue the record-setting water quality results while optimizing the chemical treatment costs in 2021. So we had a pretty extensive program with our staff and with Akron U to look at optimizing our chemicals, to try to reduce the amount of chemical but still achieve the same quality of our water, which we were able to do. Unfortunately, the chemical costs went up exponentially last year. So basically, the budget wasn't increased, but we controlled the budget by optimizing those chemicals and the way we use those chemicals. And that was all done with our own staff, and like I said, a little bit with Akron U's help. The water distribution, they repaired over 300 water main breaks last year. The division with the contractor painted over 2,000 hydrants. They flushed them all, which is over 12,000 hydrants. They renewed 281 lead services. That was between the contractor and with our own staff. And with ARPA money, we are going to add some staff in water, which are full-time employees with benefits, to put another crew on to restore lead services. We're looking at funding this year, and with continuing ARPA dollars and the commitment. I mean, the mayor, when he came in, he said, this was basically before Flint. What are we doing? We need to put more money in lead, and this has been a priority. And we really think within the next 5 years, we can eradicate all lead on the city side. Now, we don't think there's much on the private side, but last year we did get a loan, or no, we got a grant from the EPA, and we hired a contractor, and they are removing galvanized on the private side. So we're not going on private property, they're doing it, but if there's a lead service, we're going back and removing that galvanized line and putting copper in. So one of the things that water has done over the years is not only have they optimize chemical costs, principal forgiveness, getting some of this money back into the system, they have also leveraged some things up at the water plant or the watershed with leases. We've got agreements with ODNR, and they pay us to run Mogador. They sell boating and fishing license. So some of the things we've done up there's some farming leases way up in the watershed. Some of the monies that come in help offset some of these costs in water. And water's done a great job over the years doing that. So one of the goals this year, and basically we just started last year, is to look at reducing our electrical costs at the watershed. So we brought to you, I think it was a year ago or 2 years ago, about spending $45,000 on a study to do solar up at the watershed. They just started that last week. They're looking at all our land. They're looking at our surface water and see where the biggest benefit could be. Obviously, it won't do any good in the middle of the trees, but on the open land we have or the water, how we can do a solar project and then generate electricity, which will obviously lower our operating costs at the watershed. The large meters, that's another, the meter project we've talked about for a few years. It comes down to the microchips. We still have not received, or the contractor still has not received, they're still on order, the small meters, but the large meters, we did receive those, or the contractor did, and they started going in last week. So there's 700 large meters, and we will see a change in their operation. Coke was a big one up in Twinsburg, where we had a problem with the meter, and we've got that one in. But going to this new system, it is going to optimize things. It is going to help save water. Our water revenue basically is flat, but our pumpage at the plant is way down, and you're thinking, how could you pump less water and your revenues be the same? Well, one of the things we've done is leak detection, okay? Typically, in a water main break, we all see it. Hey, you guys got water coming up on that street over there. But there are some that they don't rear their ugly head. They get right into a storm sewer, which goes right to a river, and then you may not find out, you may not know for not days, it could be weeks, where's all that water going? So we have instituted a leak detection system. We have found a lot of those leaks. We have fixed those leaks. Water has done a lot more proactive job in finding these, and leaks don't tend to run for days at a time. So the other big savings in water is our Akron energy system. We've all talked about our steam system. By approving that condensate program we did a few years ago. In other words, all our steam that went out from our plant, whether it was to Akron General, Akron Children's, or any of our CBG downtown business district, all that water, once it was used, even this building, it went through, it condensated back to a liquid and went down the drain. And you cannot put steam, when it condenses, it's 210 degrees. 212 is steam. You can't put 210 degree water down the drain. So you have to mix cold water with it before you dump it down the drain. So by putting the condensate system all the way back to the plant, we've reduced hundreds of thousands of gallons of water that no longer is needed at the plant to make up water to make that steam. Now we're taking that condensate back, and you can just imagine, and we're going to do something on the efficiency of that plant, but can you imagine in the winter your water is 45 or 50 degrees and you're trying to take it into the boiler and make up that water for steam? Well, now they're bringing that water back and maybe at 140 or 150 degrees. It's already got the chemicals in it, so it reduced their chemical cost. It reduces the amount of water that we need to ship or produce for the steam system. So that's another thing that water has done. Like I said, the revenues have been flat, but the operation, we're pumping less, which means less electrical costs, which means less chemical costs to produce the same amount of water. Hey, we're all about selling more water, but we have to optimize our system to get the most out of it. One thing that we're going to start in water is our 36-inch transmission main that goes up North Street, across Valley, and then up Crosby. We've had some breaks in the past. Some of you might have remembered, I know Jeff does, on North Street, we had a pretty big break. The road caved in, so we're going to try a new system instead of open cutting all that 36-inch water main, because that's all the water to the west side of Akron. We are going to line part of that pipe. Part of it's going to be open cut, and we'll replace it, but part of it is going to be lined, that pipe. So that's a big project for this year. It should start here in a couple months.
Is that the same lining system that you used over in Mud Run?
Pretty much, but that's sewer, but this is water, but yes. But it is food grade. It's not like the sewer, okay? So talking about sewer, let's switch over to sewer real quick. 21 accomplishments. We've trained our own staff to become, we do the training, they have to take the test. They become Ohio EPA certified wastewater collection operators. We inspected and cleaned about 25% of our system. As you know, with our capacity management system, we have to TV and clean all 840 miles of our sanitary and our combination lines. So we did about 25% of that last year. We also, with our insurance that we started a few years back, HomeServe, the money, we get a small portion of every contract. It's a few cents, but when we did this program, it was to help our residents. You know, when you have a a line in your front yard, your lateral goes bad, it could be $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 for repair. And by them spending, I believe it's like $3 or $4 a month they have to pay. We get a few cents off of that. We're able to put $19,400 back into the Akron Cares program off of those insurance premiums that were paid by our residents back into the system. So that's for residential and commercial, and that's for anybody that wants to buy that insurance. Sewer maintenance, they have 8 employees that hold certifications. Water reclamation, they have 11 employees that hold those certifications. So we're trying to leverage this training for our employees, young or old, to help them move up, and that helps our operation. The more certified operators we have, it's just better for the whole operation. Our goals this year is to complete another round of TV and cleaning, which would be the 3rd of 5 years, assist staff in seeking more certifications from the state of Ohio, and to leverage our asset management system. Our asset management system, whether it's sewer, whether it's the pipe, we're trying to use the information we get to reduce overflows and blockages in our system, which obviously helps our residents at the end of the day. One thing I could tell you, we've had some big storms so far this year. I mean, some really heavy rains. And I mean, Jim can tell you, you know, when we were both in sewer, when it rained like that at 2 in the morning, you're thinking, well, I might as well get up because they're going to call. It doesn't happen as much anymore. It's a pleasant thing that when the phone doesn't ring and our guys and gals don't have to go out in the middle of the night. So what we've done to our system, the lining, the repairs, it has worked. It definitely has worked, and it's eliminated the overflows that go into the river. So it has shown that it is very fruitful. Down at the plant, now we're talking about the plant, obviously we talked about BioSep, now we're up to 280 million gallons a day. We did apply for a gold award, and it looks like we should get that through NACWA this year. And that's amazing, because if you've been down to the plant or been by it, it's like, what is going on down there? All these cranes, all these workers. I mean, hundreds of workers on both ends. We've got headworks going on right now, and at the other end it was BioSep. BioSep is wrapped up. Headworks hopefully will be wrapped up at the end of the year, maybe some cleanup in the spring of '23. But to keep that running down there is amazing by our staff. You know, when this all started and we looked at, and Brian Gresser, he's now retired, but he explained to me what had to happen. He goes, Chris, it's like performing open heart surgery and keeping things running, you know, because you can't just shut things down. I mean, we can never shut the sewers down. So they've done an amazing job down there. One thing that we started, now that we have this capacity, which we couldn't do before, is we start accepting leachate, and leachate is runoff from landfills. So when you have a landfill, any runoff from that has to be captured, and you just can't that can't run off into the surrounding ground. So it's all captured in a containment, and then it's brought to us, and then we treat it, and also is septage. So septic tanks, let's say like Peninsula, they don't have a sewer system. Now there's not a lot of residents there, but that septage that those haulers were pumping out, that had to be taken to a place like ours, and it could have been Alliance, it could have been Cleveland. So just the reduction of the cost of those trucks running over the road and the emissions, we have kind of captured the Akron area. One, it saved the contractor. I don't know if they pass it on to the resident, but it saved trucking costs. And guess what? We've generated over $800,000, and our system actually needs it. I said, because what is this going to do to our chemical costs? And the gentlemen down there, the men and women down there, some of them are biologists, they said, Chris, we need this. We need this because our storm, when we have these storms, our dilution is so high that we don't get, we don't get the reaction from the bugs, so we have to actually add chemicals to to reduce our phosphorus levels. But by doing this with septage, we saved on chemical cost, and we generated revenue, and we saved the contractors that are hauling this stuff over the road transporting this stuff. So it's been a great program. This was all done with our employees, okay? This is something a contractor, hauler contacts us, you guys take septage. When we were at 130, we wouldn't have done it. Now we're at 280, we actually need it. And we have a storage tank. So if we're in one of those storms, like we were a couple weeks ago, obviously we're not gonna let them feed it in because our flows are too high. But we have a storage tank, they store it, and then we feed it back through, and it helps our process. So I think, you know, that's one of those things that's kind of hard to explain sometimes to the general public, but that's one of the things to help keep our revenue or increase our revenue without passing on cost to our customers, our residents, because we all know we have a very unaffordable consent decree, and we're trying to make it less unaffordable every day. And that's one of the things that they did on their own, and it's worked out great. So we'll go over to Public Works.
I'm going to interrupt for just a moment. Yeah. Mr. Malik, our vice chair is not here. If you could, I need to excuse myself. So I'm going to hand chairmanship over to Mr. Malik for the remainder. But I wanted to say thank you. You got these guys sitting back there, I think it's genius. Yes, I'm looking at you. I say genius, all right? Just the things that are accomplished blows my mind. Please excuse me. I have to excuse myself.
No problem.
Okay,
no problem.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry I didn't introduce Jim Aiken and Francia Lash. I mean, obviously I couldn't do any of this without them, but the three of us couldn't do it without all our employees in all these divisions. We're only as good as the people that are out there working for us every day.
Mr. Little, do you want to continue with Public Works?
I can, unless you guys
Please go ahead.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Public Works Administration, which is Jim Hall and his staff, you know, through the COVID pandemic response, the Public Works divisions assisted many other departments and divisions during the pandemic with disinfection and contamination efforts. So I commend them. Some of them worked outside their class, whether it was at the time when all this started, and we finished a little bit last year. Now those divisions are doing it themselves, but you know, going in and decontamination, the police cars between shifts, going through the fire stations for our men and women that stay there 24 hours a day, doing some of that work. It was just, it was yeoman's work, and they stepped up and they did it, and they did it in their own buildings. So we continue to pursue grant funding and look at additional revenue opportunities to reduce our operation costs. We're looking at you know, the possibility of electric vehicles, and not only electric vehicles, but maybe how to charge those electric vehicles. So we've got a couple things we're looking at there. Is it a solar array to charge the batteries, and then the batteries to charge the vehicles? Obviously, on some of our vehicles, we can't go to electric. It wouldn't be feasible when you talk about maybe a snow and ice truck that runs 24 hours. But some of these pickups and some of these other cars, supervisory vehicles, we're looking at how we can leverage some of these grants to accommodate that. We did finish our fleet focus upgrade last year, which is all our maintenance materials and equipment of all our motor equipment. And then this year we are looking to finish our AVL system upgrades with AT&T. That was administration. Now let's go to street cleaning. Some of our accomplishments: we completed one round of leaf removal before snow and ice operations started. We have a little bit we're out there cleaning up right now. We just started our sweeping last week of all our streets, so I think it was if your trash collection was on Monday, we swept on Tuesday. Tuesday, trash collection, we swept on Wednesday. So as they're out there, they identified some piles out there, and we did have some leaf vacs out there picking up some of those piles that weren't called in. Some of our goals this year is to continue to work on improvements with the snow and ice control program, including a public-facing operation dashboard, installing tablets and cameras in the snow and ice equipment. One thing I'll say about that, and we had it in the capital budget, we're going to purchase 60 tablets to start, and ODOT has had cameras in their truck for, I think, a few years, and we're talking to them, but they've gone through more than 10 different iterations of cameras. I mean, if you can imagine a camera mounted in a truck bouncing around, you know, they started with this one, they said, well, we could tell you this, don't buy this one, and then they went to this one, and it just didn't work. So I think they finally got one, and I think we've let them work the bugs out. So one of the things we're looking at these tablets is how can we geolocate things? And obviously, you know, and the truck that goes down your street, the most frequent is the trash truck, okay? So our sanitation routes is once a week. So our idea is not only to have a camera, but have that tablet in that camera, or have that tablet in that truck, and as that driver's going down the street, he'll be able to see the active and the non-active accounts for sanitation. So who should have trash pickup, who should not. But the biggest thing is, and the mayor's been pushing this for years, is why can't those trash guys, how many people have drove by that pothole, you know? How many people have drove by that pothole and no one calls it in? All right, well, now if they're in that trash truck and they see that pothole and they're in front of my house, on that tablet, it'll geolocate, and I don't know, Jim's trying to work it out. Is it going to be 6 main things? So is pothole one of those things? That driver, all he has to do is hit pothole, and what'll happen is it'll geolocate it, and it'll automatically send a work over to the highway division that I have a pothole on this street at this address. On that same note, now they start at 4:30, so in the winter we're going to get a few more hours, but if that street light is out and they're driving down the street and one of those things is street light, he hits that, it geolocates it, and it sends the work over that we have a street light in front of this house. That is 2 of the things that we're looking at, but obviously we're also looking at snow and ice, whether that plows up, whether that plows down, have a camera in that truck, and it's a teaching thing too. I mean, with all the drivers that we have in highway and street cleaning and in parks, we do have a turnover, and I mean, I don't want to belabor on snow and ice, but that last snowstorm on Monday, highway had 3 people retire. Those 3 people was about 108 years total on Monday, and we had a snowstorm on Thursday. We lost that experience. Now, we did have other employees, some were seasonals in those trucks, and they did have 3 weeks before they got into a heck of a mess, but still, if we had that camera, it's a teaching experience. If you're on Canton Road, then you should start in the center and plow your way out and turn around and come back the same way. You know, so we're out there, but this is going to help everybody, not only with how to train, but also what we're doing in real time, where that plow's at, how many times that truck's made a pass, and we'll be able to see the road too on what's going on. So that's part of the tablets. I know I said that in street cleaning, but the biggest budget is street cleaning when we come to snow and ice. Building maintenance. Building maintenance, a couple things last year. We completed the upgrade to all our parking deck equipment. Some of you have been in our parking decks, so we have all new equipment. It all talks to the same thing. All the equipment's the same, and all decks before we didn't have all the same equipment, so it was a challenge. So it should help with our revenue, it should help with our special events. We'll be able to do those things. We just need people to come back downtown. So as you're out there talking to these businesses, let's get back to work and fill these decks back up. We did the roof at Firestone Park, we did the roof at Good Park last year. The Municipal Service Center, we did LED light upgrade. We've done numerous upgrades. Ed Davis tennis courts, we upgraded those LEDs, we upgraded the lights to LED, I should say. So this year, one of our goals is to get that generator in at Municipal Service Center, and also we will do some of that work in-house with our own staff. Our Highway Division, I'll try to go through this. We repaired almost 800 restoration permits from water and sewer. We did those in-house, so water main breaks, sewer breaks. We did all those patches. We had 1,687 pothole requests last year, and we fulfilled them all. Now, sometimes one request could be 4 potholes, I understand, but to compare last year, 2021, to 2017 before issue 4, that number was double in 2017 is what it was. So we've reduced the potholes tremendously just because of all the resurfacing that we've done in the last 4 years. So this year, one of our, obviously our goals is to get all the resurfacing done. We carried over about 60 miles from last year. The contractor's already started. I believe he's on Hillbush today. You might have saw him. So they've started paving already in Ward 6. They're going to work their way around the city. We did have a piece of legislation last week for assessments, and as you know, that timing, the way it works out, we're hoping to sign the contract mid-May for the other 43 miles, and then the other monies that we have in resurfacing are for those other ODOT projects that we talked about last week. But Highway will inspect all those miles with their staff out there. So one thing that we did last year, our CDL program, our own staff trained our own full-time employees that didn't have a CDL, and we offer that across all divisions, whether it's highway or whether it's any public works, but it could be water, it could be sewer, it could be traffic. It could be one of you if you'd want to train. So we had last year, and I believe we had 22 employees take the test. We trained, and they all passed. So we had 100% last year pass our CDL training in-house. We did purchase a milling machine, a small one in highway last year. We did order a paver. It didn't come in. We're expecting that any time. So some of these larger repairs we plan to do ourselves by milling and doing the paving ourselves. Now, it's not going to be a whole street, but it could be a water main break that buckled up 30 feet of road, and that's what we will do in-house instead of contracting that out. Motor equipment. These guys and gals, I mean, it's been a tough year. It's been a tough year getting parts for these trucks. We talked about this before. We had a lot of trucks ordered that didn't come in, so they're keeping our fleet running. And one thing they did back in probably July of last year is proactively go in and refurbish or do what they had to do, changing hoses, replacing parts on our snow and ice equipment. And it really proved, especially after that first storm, but we lost some equipment in that first storm that we didn't have in that second storm, and the parts weren't available. I mean, we did have enough, but we don't have any extra plows and extra trucks where we could just replace the whole fleet. So we did have a problem in that second storm, but they did a great job getting the things up even throughout the storm, and doing that proactive work really showed that our equipment sustained through this past winter, and they plan to do, now that hopefully there's no more snow, they're going to start on that equipment again for next year. But one thing that Scott Robinette, he has done, he's looking at some of those obsolete things. Before, we would basically call someone in for like scrap price. He's been putting some of this equipment on govdeals.com, which has generated revenue for our motor equipment division. And by advertising, You have to bid on it. You have so many days to come to our place, pay us, obviously, first, and then pick it up and take it. We don't deliver anything. So that's worked out good in all divisions by using govdeals.com, because some of those things you see on there are obsolete and you can't find them. And if we have them, instead of scrapping them, we're going to try to sell them off to generate more revenue. So Parks, the Parks Division, we've increased some of our full-time employees. I think we went from 32 to 38, and it was mentioned in the nuisance in the previous presentation that we are going to mow all city-owned lots, whether they have a structure on them or not, with in-house people, which is over 1,000. So I know as council people, when you get those high grass and weed calls and you get, it's on the corner of this or it's between these two houses, unless you would go on and look, you probably don't know if it's privately owned or if it's city owned. So we are going to do that, and I have to give John Malish credit for this because he's worked with our GIS folks to optimize that whole thing. He's actually putting AVL locators on the mowers. He's looking at, he wants to, when he, let's say he's mowing a park, and he said, if I mow north to south, or if I mow east to west, can I reduce the time on that mower, okay? He wants to do more in-house or more proactive maintenance on these mowers himself to extend the life. He's purchased some new equipment. With these new employees, I think you're going to see a big improvement in the grass mowing for 2022. So we're real excited. He's been working with Francia very close and his staff. He's going to, the contractors that we had last year, John's going to work with them to try to help them, make them more efficient, and make them successful. So they responded to 2,100 service requests last year. They trimmed over 500 trees. Unfortunately, we had about 700 trees that were damaged last year in storm damage that had to be removed, and they also, diseased trees was about 350 that they had to remove last year. So one of the changes that John made was he hired a couple new landscapers to do that mowing, but also he's looking to train more of his employees just to look at these trees and to make these calls on these trees. So we'll go on to sanitation. Sanitation, we added some employees there. As you know, we've taken over the Republic portion of the city, which most of that, I believe, was on the west side. A lot of it was on way out on Route 8, or Ward 8. So we have taken over the whole city, and we did a business case. We worked with finance to show, by adding these employees, buying equipment, that we could be as efficient or better. And one of the things, our complaints were not only mist trash, but also the damage to our carts. So one of the things that we saw since we've taken over, we've decreased the request for cart repair from 6,364 down to 3,622, which is a 43% decrease in cart requests. Now that could be broken wheels, that could be a broken lid. That's the biggest thing in sanitation. We are continuing to work with Keep Akron Beautiful on the Recycle Right program to reduce our contamination. One thing we did, we collected over 12,000 tires last year. So that cost keeps going up. A cost per tire to our contractor for us is $4.25 per tire for us to get rid of. But our residents, we're hoping that maybe that was a lot of spring cleaning last year, that we don't have that many, those big of numbers, but we still have a bunch of tires that are dumped throughout the city, whether it's sidewalks or empty lots. But those tires are usually collected by nuisance or by street cleaning. So that's another cost that we have on top of this budget. So we're continuing to work with education. Maybe those cameras can help too, where these hot spots are. So with that, I think I covered everything, and I will take any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Little. It's an immense amount of information. I want to thank you, thank Mr. Aitken and Mr. Lash. Do we have questions? Mr. Lombardo?
I just have one on page 94. It's actually the Public Service Administration. So I noticed in 2021, there's inter-fund expenses, 3.1 million, and now that's budgeted for like just 11,000. So
those are the subsidies that we do to some of the enterprise funds. So we are not showing any subsidy right now, although I suspect maybe for parking we will need some, and potentially some for airport. But that's what that represents. So when you have a bad parking year like we've had the past couple years, we have to subsidize some of that operational cost. So while I'm not showing anything right now, I suspect that maybe, and we're going to have to wait and see how things go, we're hoping for certainly an improvement over where we've been the last couple years. So we may have to amend for that as we've done in years past, but that's what that represents.
Okay. And the other thing is maybe just, well, it's not budget related, so okay. Thank you. I know the tires are a big issue. I just wanted to know if we could educate the public a little bit more, maybe with maybe a flyer or a card in our water bill or something like that.
As far as what, sir?
Just to let them know that, hey, you're entitled to put 8 tires out on the curb, and I know we still have to get rid of those, but it may reduce the litter for the nuisance people to go pick up all the tires laying around the city. Some type of something in the water bill.
Do we have other questions? I have 2, I think. First, in sanitation, I guess it's more of a comment, but out in Ward 8, we have seen the benefits from the city taking over the routes. I think it's very clearly better service, so I really appreciate it. Other comment?
Chairman, I forgot to mention one thing on sanitation. Sure. Since you brought it up.
Sure.
We are looking to optimize the whole city, because currently with Republic, they're on a 5-day rotation. So a lot of the west side, it was spread out over 5 days, which isn't real efficient for us. So we're looking how we can optimize the city, and maybe Ward 8 might just be Wednesdays. We're not sure yet. We don't want to start changing everybody's day, but we want to make it more efficient. We want to look at our number of households, and we want to, instead of sending, being out in Ward 8 for 5 days because, this neighborhood was Monday and whatever, we want to optimize that and change everything up to make us more efficient. So that may be coming.
That's really helpful information. I guess the other point would be about clean energy and the environment. I think as we look at staffing going forward, it might be helpful to have one person whose full-time role is in kind of making sure what is the city's strategic plan around that. So that's one suggestion. But overall, if we don't have any other questions, I just want to thank everyone in the service department. I think your presentation, Mr. Luddle, shows an immense amount of thoughtfulness that goes into the administration of the service department. The city would not run without the folks who work in this department doing really difficult work each and every day. So if you could communicate on behalf of the council back to them.
I definitely will. Obviously, a lot of them are 24/7, so a lot of those operations, we're just like safety. They run 24/7 too, so thank you, sir.
Yeah, but often it's, thankless. People are frustrated about potholes. People are frustrated about trash, but it's appreciated. And if you do have a pothole in front of your house, you don't have to wait for the trash truck to geolocate it. You can reach out to 311. So anyways, with that, I think we'll begin again tomorrow at 3 p.m.
That is correct.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Ferker.
Thank you.
If we don't have anything else,